Welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. I am your host, Devonharris. And as always, what we do is that we share ideas and insights that are going to challenge you and inspire you to keep on pushing and live your absolute best life. So I am guessing you want that, right? Because we want that for you and from you and of you. And if you want the same, I have to tell you the good news, you're in the right place. So again, welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. Our guest today has been a Pan-Africanist for most of her adult life. She's been working in organizations for social justice and community development for more than 30 years, directly influencing lives in New York, Ohio, and her native Caribbean. For the positive results her leadership has brought to us, she has been recognized for her work in community development by the New York City Council, as well as the New York State Senate. She works with small business owners to bolster their capacity for success while keeping joy in their lives and the lives of their employees and meeting financial goals. And she does the same for families through her SustainableJoy Commuinications model. She would like you to know that despite all that serious work though, and we're talking about hard work, she enjoys laughter, family, and friends, and growing in her relationship with her creator. And I am really, really excited, I have to say, to welcome my really good friend, Claudette, operative word, Joy Spence to the show. Claudette Joy, welcome to Keep On Pushing.
Thank you so much, Devon, for having me on, inviting me, and even telling the world that I am your friend. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, is that what that was supposed to be a secret between us.
Oh no, now it's public.
Oh, man, I let the cat out of the bag, but it's wonderful to see you, my friend.
Thank you.
One of the things that I know is that a lot of people have this mantra or perhaps a philosophy that says, hey, once this thing happens, then I'll be where I want to be and then I'll be happy, right? And so it seems like happiness, contentment, joy is predicated on some event taking place at some future date. That's their joy. I recently read, though, this quote that I want to share with you. Joy is a perpetual celebration of the perfection of every moment. So I'm kind of curious as to how you, Claudette Joy, would define joy.
Well, my perspective on joy is that it's an innate quality within each of us, that we were born with it, that over the years of living, it can get dusty and covered up and full of algae, and so the joy diminishes as we live, but it's there. It's a part of you, it's part of me, it's a part of all of us.
Yeah. So it's innate. So I'm thinking about a baby when they're born and they're, I guess you could say they are joyful, right? Because as I said, joy is innate, is really part of our nature. But I can hear the cynic saying, well, a baby can afford to be joyful because his or her every need is met. But that's not the experience that their parents are having, right? They have to deal with all kinds of difficulties, and especially during these COVID-19 times when there's so much fear and despair and worry and uncertainty swirling around. But outside of COVID, people are dealing with all kinds of other crises, whether it's a financial crisis or a health crisis or a relationship crisis. So if joy is supposed to be innate in us, Claudette Joy, and so many of us are having challenge with joy, how do we find joy during times of crisis?
As you were talking about, the cynics saying, oh, the baby doesn't have any responsibilities and the parents have to, it made me think that even in parenting, we begin to cover the baby's joy because the parents who are anxious or fearful about what it is they need to provide for the family and for the baby, that is projected onto the child. And before you know it, the child's innate joy that it brought, into the home begins to dwindle. But I think if we are mindful, if we are taught from an early stage that joy is deep within us and the value that joy has in elevating not only our spiritual self, but our physical self, if we're taught that, it helps us to better manage the challenges that life is going to bring. Having and nurturing your innate joy doesn't mean that challenges aren't going to come, because that's kind of the way life is. If you live long enough, you begin to realize that's the way life is.
Yeah.
What the joy does is that it stabilizes you in such a way that you can think clearly and see clearly what your options are for managing whatever circumstance that comes that you call a challenge.
So the joy stabilizes us. And so I'm trying to figure out if, someone who would not necessarily describe themselves as joyful, maybe they're going through a period in their life when they don't find life joyful. How do they, I guess, square that round hole, as it were?
Do you think they want to be joyful?
I think all of us want to be joyful and happy and contented. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think when we get to that point where we realize, man, there's no joy in this. First, you have to figure out what's really going on in whatever the relationship is. If it's where you live, it's the kind of car you have, it is your family and friends or employers, your business partners. If there's no joy in this, one of the things I would suggest that you do is stop and do an intellectual analysis of what's going on in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've done that, then you move on to what is it that is allowing me not to be joyful in this circumstance, and be truthful with yourself. And then decide what it is that you want to change so that your joy emerges and anchors you to help you navigate that circumstance. So one, there's this intellectual analysis, yeah? After that, it's an opportunity to begin to tap into the resource that we have, right? Joy is not a physical thing. It manifests in the physical. It lower your blood pressure. You know what I mean? I'm not suggesting that if you have high blood pressure, you don't go to the doctor and follow her or his instructions.
Because I'm full of joy. I don't live full of other medication.
But you can connect with or reconnect or heighten your connection with your spiritual self. The part of the self that we can't see. We call that the spiritual piece, right? We can't see it, so that's what we call it. The physical piece we can see, and we call that the body. So reconnect. There are several ways to do that. The fact that you are even thinking about it is a point of connection. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, but our spiritual self, some people obviously think in terms of religion, and a lot of times when we use words like joy and peace and love, it's always aligned with some kind of religious practice, which is fine. And then there are others who don't subscribe to a particular faith, but are more spiritual. And then there are those, I would argue, who they're atheists. More than that, I guess that they may have lost connection with that higher being, so to speak. And I know you can't speak for them, but what would you suggest they do if they're finding themselves in a situation, a circumstance, an environment where it's not there, they don't feel like there's joy in their life?
But I would like to suggest that if they subscribe to to the belief that as humans, there is a part of us that we can touch, and there's a part of it that we cannot touch. And there are people who call that intangible part of us, they call it different things. The spirit, the soul, God, creator, sustainer. But I would encourage people not to get lost in the names, but to look more at the concept, at the energy. If you believe that there's an energy that is greater than you, then I think it makes it a little easier to begin to explore ways to uplift and refill and reconnect and strengthen that non-physical part of us that allows us to get up and walk and laugh. And you know, am I making sense?
Yeah, completely. I get it. I mean, the fact is, whether or not you acknowledge it, there is that non-physical spiritual side of us. And so what you're telling people to do is to, you know, become introspective, right? Maybe take some time out to meditate. And
there are people who get turned off by the word meditate, you know, because they think it's some unreligious type of approach. And oftentimes we get bogged down in the names. But what it is, yes, Devon, is taking some quiet time to be introspective, to listen to what your mind is telling you and how you are interpreting that. Is it good, bad, and different, or is it non-judgmental?
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes it's the judgmental piece that gets us into trouble. You know, we start getting fearful, we start getting ashamed and embarrassed, and yeah, we've all done some things that are not nice or not kind. You know, and when we get to a point a place in our journey where we realize that we've done that, it's a good opportunity to be honest to yourself and say, oh my, I mean, what was I thinking when I did that?
Yeah.
You know, I gotta forgive myself. And if the person is still around and you want to step to it and ask the person, look, man, I'm a little wiser now, and when I did such and such, I really apologize. You know, if the person is not around or is not even open to receiving you, then you still have to allow yourself the forgiveness, because forgiveness eats away at our being. It robs us of our joy, it robs us of our contentment, and it really delays or circumvents or sidetracks our elevation of being more spiritual, more connected with that energy that is greater than us, that is the power within us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we're all on this journey called life. And as we kind of intonated earlier, things are going to happen. Like life is this duality of pleasure and pain and, you know, joy and sadness, you know, delight and difficulty, all of that stuff. And so sometimes, I guess our joy kind of gets stuck in the rut of life, right? I know you have used the term algae, and you used it earlier. Algae kind of builds up on our joy. Talk to us a little bit, Claudette Joy, about algae.
The algae of life. I guess whether we pronounce it American or English or accent.
Sometimes I have to be corrected, you know. All my American friends, I just use English pronunciation.
ALGAE. And when we think about that in the botanical sense, it's a green mass, right? It's a plant life. And so it's an acronym for the ways in which some of our inherent qualities are covered up. Some of our joy or peace or happiness, which is when we think about happiness, it's a continuous thing. In this life, when you fall in love, it's a happy. You realize you're in love with somebody who's in love back with you. That is such a happy time. However, the joy is more consistent. it is more persistent, if you will. And if you work on maintaining it, algae can't grow on it. And the things that come into our life, disappointments can cause us to get hurt and maybe get selfish, right? And the ego kicks in. It's the I. All right, so this relationship didn't work out. The next one come, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to, and you're projecting the I all the way in such a self-promoting way that it blocks the energy of your joy that is there, that it blocks the energy of your peace. It distracts you. It distracts us. The other piece, algae, and I think I said I'm not going to give you all of them because I don't want to hold you hostage, but I would like your audience to come back to hear some more at a later date. So attachment is one of the things. You know, sometimes we're so attached to people that, Lord, I listen to some of these love songs, yeah? And it's like, I can't live without you if you leave me. Right? Like,
but I guess that's how they feel, right? Isn't that, I guess that's not the joy part, that's a love piece that's just coming to the forefront.
That's an attachment. You're so attached to the person or to the things that there's no room for your inherent qualities to emerge and flourish. Am I making sense?
Yeah, completely. And so you're saying, just to build on that, that if you are lacking that joy within you, then you don't have it to offer to the relationship because you can't give what you don't have. And hence, we're going to get into relationship in a minute, but the relationship then suffers.
Right. All of your relationships, all of our relationships. So we come into, we're born into this life with this inherent joy in us. And we go to school, we go to wherever, we play, and we are focusing on the physical. You know, you go to the medical doctor to make sure your child is at the right age and height and weight for their age. But the spiritual piece of us, for the most part, is not being nurtured. Even though they send us to these religious institutions, you're not necessarily getting the foundational teaching about the inherent qualities that the non-physical part of us has. You see?
Yeah, makes sense. And so, you know, when you talk about taking time out, you know, use that dreaded word meditation, but maybe introspection, let's use that word. What we're doing in essence is listening to ourselves and really working on the relationship between us and our creator, and hence the relationship with ourselves.
Yeah, it's really quiet time, you know, where you train your mind to stop thinking about all these different things that we need to do. It's quiet time where you get so focused, and it takes practice, it takes discipline to get there. And so I would suggest to anyone who may have an interest in trying to strengthen, to be more consistent in this inherent joy, just to start 5 minutes a day, and your mind is gonna drift because it's not yet disciplined to be focused. You're an athlete, you know, you're a military man, you know the importance of the consistency of discipline in building your muscle as an athlete. If you practice push-ups for 5 minutes a day, every day or every other day, over time, at the end of a month, you'll be stronger than where you were when you started that first day or the first week. But you have to stay with it.
Indeed, yeah.
And I often suggest to people, all right, so 5 minutes a day for 7 days may be a bit overwhelming for you now. Try it 5 minutes every other day. Put it on your calendar. Write it down somewhere and let it be a part of your daily practice.
So, you know, spending quiet time is a discipline that all of us can develop, right? So it requires a certain level of commitment to get that done.
Correct. And, you know, sometimes you say, oh, we don't have the time. Yes, you have the time. Turn off the TV. It's not on the TV that you can't miss for 5 minutes. It's going to be there tomorrow, and half an hour later.
That's
You know,
very true. Even if you miss the evening news, that 5 minutes, that 5 minute bit of news will will circle back.
and it
Will
and it
circle back, yeah.
and will it will most very likely douse some water on your joy.
That's a fair point too.
It's very likely. So I'd suggest you start your morning when you wake up in the morning, whatever your routine is, try to spend 5 minutes, whether it's in the bathroom or you go outside and you sit down under a tree or you sit in your favorite chair, or if you're traveling, don't do it while you're driving.
Not if you're
Or
behind the
flying
wheel.
a plane or, piloting a boat or something like that.
Yeah. So, you teach about sustainable joy, and I was just kind of reading a while back, and I came across a term, perpetual joy. Is there a difference between the two, or are we just talking semantics here?
On the surface of it, it seems to me to be semantic. Perpetual means forever, never, never, right? Is that what it means?
Mm-hmm.
And sustainable means it's consistent.
Yeah.
It's consistent, yeah.
Earlier you spoke about forgiveness and the fact that, all of us have done some things that we're not necessarily proud of, and we, need to forgive ourselves of those wrongs that we have committed, and, perhaps go apologize to somebody who we wronged as well. So here we're talking about relationships, right? The relationship that you have with yourself, the relationship with you that you have with others. We're going to talk to us about how we touched on it earlier. You see joy working in tandem, I suppose, with healthy relationships.
Working with what kind of relationship?
In tandem, working hand in hand with healthy
relationships.
Yeah, joy.
Well, the joy that you bring, I guess, if folks are in tune, they will know that you bring joy because you have an air about you. Mm-hmm. People who are centered in peace and joy and love, because it's not that you have joy and that's the only thing you have, eh? There are other attributes that go with that, and they layer and they form this beautiful person that we are, this beautiful soul, who we are.
Yeah, actually,
like
on that, I'm sorry, Claudette Joy, but on that note, there was a quote that I read from the great late Jim Rohn, where he says, nothing can bring more joy to nothing can bring more joy to life than beautifully fulfilling relationships. Nothing can bring more joy to life than beautifully fulfilling relationships. So it seems to me that, what Jim is saying is kind of what you're just saying about all the things you bring to a relationship, the joy and the, I guess, a connectedness between these two people or group, or this particular group.
Yeah. But when I hear that quote, I think about the joy, the fulfilledness that comes when we tap into the joy in us that our Creator gave us. We are born with that. And so maintaining that relationship and nurturing that joy through our quiet time is important. That is so fulfilling. And then everything else flows out of that. It goes into the relationship that you and I have, Devon. It goes into the relationship I have with my parents, my siblings, my colleagues, the work that I do in community. Like I love you even though I don't know. I say, how can you love me? You don't even know me. Well, I think we're connected. I happen to believe that.
Right.
Your joy is my joy. Your success is my success. I'm happy for you when you accomplish something. And that may be a difference in my take on the difference between joy and happiness. Happiness, I think, happens in a moment when you accomplish something. Eh?
Right.
Like you earn your degree, you graduate from high school, you have your master's, you have your doctorate, you get the new car, you get the house, You know, you get married, you marry the love of your life, and the relationship is just, you're happy in the moment. But the joy is consistent and will take you through all that. When the novelty of the newness of the acquisition disappears, the joy is still there.
Still there. That's what it's a perfection of every moment, the perpetual, so the never-ending celebration of every moment versus just being euphoric in a particular moment based on the acquisition, as you just said.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, your book, Nurturing the Garden of Joy, provocative essays on relationships, right? There again comes a connection between joy and relationship. I guess what I want to know is, as we find our joy, and let's talk about, start out the conversation.
As we rediscover, come with it.
Or as we rediscover, okay.
Come with it.
Yeah, you're right, because it's innate, right? So as we rediscover, as we reconnect with our joy, you're saying that first of all, the relationship that we have with ourselves get better.
Absolutely. The relationship with that greater source, whatever name you choose to call it, fuels the joy. And it fuels how we look at ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, and I say critically, and I use that word with the intention of it not being judgmental, although you can say, man, that was not a good thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
And be able to detach from it and say, boy, I'm gonna make sure I don't do that again. I didn't like the person's response to it, and maybe I wasn't kind. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like people feeling that way, because I happen to believe in and try to work by do unto others as you would have them do to you.
Indeed.
And you can find out that throughout many spiritual practices in their teachings and stuff. And so that's one of the principles I try to live by daily. And sometimes I miss the mark, Sometimes I miss the
As we
mark.
all do. I mean, you use the word critically, and you took pains to explain that you're not, beating yourself up. And I think all of us benefit from constructive criticisms. And
That's what it is.
And especially when it is internally directed, I would say, i.e. when you're taking that time out, that 5 minutes to kind of reconnect with yourself, grab that quiet time to figure out what it is that you're doing or you're not doing, and to admit. I think that's perhaps the first step, right? In admitting when you have erred, so that you can correct it and start truly connecting or reconnecting with your joy.
Right. And in the quiet time that we spend, it's a great opportunity to be asking the question going into it, am I really living for the purpose which I was created? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes the unjoy, the unhappiness comes because we're going down a path that's not really the path we were created to go down. We're learning some lessons along the way, but there's another path coming up down the road, while you're now at that point where you're asking the question, what am I going to do about my joy? That's an indicator to me that we're ready to make a shift.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, as we operate in the world, earlier you spoke about the fact that sometimes the parents themselves, all of us are born with this innate joy. It's natural. The baby comes out of the womb joyfully or joyous, and the parents get bogged down with just the challenges of life and perhaps, pour that on them. So we all become conditioned somewhat by our environment.
Yes.
By the things that are happening around us, the things that we are exposed to, and hence the vocabulary, the vernacular that we tend to use. And so in your book, you speak about this one particular song where the word wretched is used, and you reject that. So share some thoughts with us on that.
Well, you know, my mother was the one who introduced me to going to church in adulthood. Huh?
Right.
And that has been a part of my own spiritual journey. I do some study now with the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual Organization, and that's been an elevating, and is an elevating experience for me. But one of the things I noticed in the church is this particular hymn that's saying, Amazing Grace, yang, 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 that saved a wretch like me. And I'm like, I ain't no wretch. I'm sorry. I've done some things that I am not proud of. And if I had my chance to do it over, I would do it differently now with the knowledge and the wisdom that I have. But I'm no wretch. I'm not calling myself that. And part of the challenge, as a matter of fact, there is the United Church of Christ and some other denominations. I know they changed the word from rich to soul, right? To save a soul like me.
Mm-hmm.
But the point I'm trying to make is that we have to be mindful about the words that we sing and say in these institutions that are really not building our esteem. And certainly as African people, there has been a dearth of negativities about us for centuries, despite the fact that we had this great civilization in Egypt years ago, despite the fact that we have great communities, men and women now, in the 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st century, there's something, some way that this negativity gets around and is so ubiquitous that it really disturbs me. So I would encourage all people to be mindful of the words that they allow people to say to them about themselves. Reject that.
Yeah.
Don't call you out of your name. If you know what I mean? Don't embrace any negative. Yeah, yes, we will admit, we'll be honest with ourselves and say we have growing areas and all of that stuff. But I reject that.
Yeah. So we used the word forgiveness earlier, and in that same song, I think what it's basically saying is that, and I use the word wretch, that I guess you came to the realization that you were not behaving righteously. And so you asked for, begged for, and received forgiveness. So I'm thinking that, you know, as we go through life and we take on all of these influences around us, that sometimes maybe we saw ourselves as a wretch, saw as in the past tense, but now you have, as you spoke about earlier, figured out that you needed to forgive yourself for the ills that you committed. And now it's part of that journey, right? You're growing and you're becoming more enlightened, and hence, you know, connecting more and more to your joy.
Yeah, it's about asking yourself, and it's at the level of detachment, right? It's giving yourself permission to let go of that embarrassment or that shame that you had about this thing that you did, and then doing things differently going forward. Huh? It's about being more kind going forward. It's about being intentional about being more loving in the universe sense.
Yeah, got you. So in your book, to go back to the book, you know, the Nurturing the Garden of Joy, provocative essays on relationships, I would say you coach your thoughts and your writing towards a female audience. You speak about the fact that, hey, when there's a breakup, you need to spend some time introspectively, again, re-examining your own life and your own desires. You know, I was speaking with another friend of mine recently who spoke about the fact that, you know, young women, when they go through, you know, trauma earlier in their life, you know, they tend to go, for want of a better term, seek love in all the wrong places. Is that what you're referring to, you know, Claudette Joy, when you talk talk to women about the need that they need to spend time examining and re-examining their lives so that they don't go seek love and hence joy in all the wrong places?
You know, I am talking primarily to women because of my personal experience in relationships and my friends, my sister girlfriends, and my observation of sisters and women in the wider community. And I know the pain, you know, it's real. The emotional pain is real when you are in an intimate partner relationship and it ends and you don't know why. And the first thing you start to do is to blame yourself. If I'd done X, Y, and Z, maybe he wouldn't have left. And so I want to encourage my sisters to not take that on, because you are you, and yes, you and I, we have some growing edges. And if neither of you was at a point in your development where you could sit down together and have a meaningful heart-to-heart conversation and say, I no longer want to be in a committed relationship with you, and here are the reasons, and we're gonna separate. You know, take the time. If we weren't, neither one of us were at that point, and someone walks away, you can spend a lifetime coming up with 1,000 reasons why the person left and still not come up with the right answers as to why they left. So I encourage you, and while the book is written to my sisters, there are messages in there for our brothers too. Because I know, I found out that men hurt in the same way. Women, we do these things to each other regardless of gender. Huh? Mm-hmm. So I would encourage my brothers to read the book, Nurturing the Garden of Joy, and just put their face in it, just put their experience in it, and see how we can grow to become better at communicating our vulnerabilities to people who care. I'm not telling you to go out there and tell everybody, you know what I mean? But if you're honest and if you're trusting and you want a deep, meaningful relationship with another person, you have to be vulnerable at some point. And the hope is that both people come with a level of honesty about who I am and what I would like. And the other person, you share that and see where there's overlay. Because sometimes I'm the right person for you, but you're not the right person for me, but we can figure it out together. And we can still like each other and be supportive of each other, but we're not committed to each other in some ways in which intimate partners may want to commit in a partnership, lifelong partner relationship. There are different ways. I mean, when I was younger, I think I didn't know the art of expressing myself. I really didn't know what I wanted, to tell you the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, because, sorry to jump in there, one person may know what they want and the other person think they know what they want, but they really don't. And so while there may be an intersection, an overlay, I think there's a danger, and it's not that you're deliberately not being genuine, but that you still don't bring your true self to that relationship, whether it's an intimate partner relationship or some other relationship, correct?
But you got to bring your true self, whatever it is. If you're honest with who you are and where you are in this journey, you can bring that self. Mm-hmm. Being fully aware now that we're always changing and growing, Some principles will remain the same. Some things are foundational, but we continue to grow. And when you're in a partner relationship, each of you most likely is growing. And hopefully, to be able to sit down and have that conversation, honey, man, I was thinking about X, Y, and Z, and here's what I'm thinking about X, Y, and that level of exchange can help each of you to grow, each of us to grow.
Indeed, indeed. So I also know, and we mentioned it in your introduction, that you conduct these Sustainable Joy workshops. Talk to us a little bit about that. I know you work with companies, organizations, and families.
Yes. Well,
Um, so talk to us about the nature of those workshops. What kind of things you do, Thanks for watching. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you click on that subscribe button and hit that bell. You'll get a notification every time we post a new video. And don't forget, share it with your friends, man. They want to be inspired as well, right? So share it. Don't keep it. And before you go on to the next video, visit my website, www.devonharris.com. Keep on pushing.